Hello crafties and welcome to another video. My name is Infiniti and today I am going to show you guys how to make a beanie. Now about a month or so ago on Facebook I was asking about video ideas and I had a couple that kind of went along together. So one of them was to talk a little bit about warming up America, and then the other one was how to make simple hats. So warming up America is it's an initiative basically inviting crafters, both knitters and crocheters, to come together, make up pieces, and distribute them to either local charities, local closets, basically to benefit the homeless and the less fortunate with something warm. So if you have been following me for any length of time, you know I am very big on giving, just different life stuff in itself. I am always happy to give back to the community that I serve. So today I'm going to show you guys how to make just the simple beanie, and this is one of the items, this is like a staple item for my giveaways that I do every year. But first things first, before we get started, I want to give a few tips about making these beanies. So first of all, my biggest probably thing is that I never use wool. Like, unless I can create a lining for wool hats specifically, I don't use them because over time wool does eat out the hair. I don't care who you are, it will destroy your hairline, and that's not something you want. So either you can crochet another lining, or if you have the know-how for sewing, you can stitch up a lining and sew it into your hat. I also wouldn't recommend the fleece lining because, like the wool, that can eat out a person's hair. So without further ado, I'm going to be doing this tutorial today with an acrylic yarn, Red Heart, and the color I'm using today is Spring Green, if I can get it. Center strings can be stubborn. And what you are going to need today, aside from the yarn, will be a 5.5mm crochet hook. You are going to need scissors or snips, maybe a stitch marker if you're a beginner, and a sewing needle or darning needle, yarn needle, whatever you want to call it. So without further ado, we're going to dive right into the tutorial. Okay crafties, so what we're going to do is start off this tutorial, and I'm going to assume that you are a beginner. So what we're going to do today is make this hat with the magic circle. Now that is my preferred method of working in the round for hats and most other items, so that's what I'll be using today. But if you have knowledge of the chaining method and would prefer to do that, that also works. I would recommend chaining maybe 3 or 4 and then working into that loop. So to make a magic circle, I am going to lay my yarn over my hand. I'm going to move my pinky kind of like that, so that I can wrap this tail end of my yarn around my 3 fingers. And I'm going to hold both my tail end and my working yarn together with my pinky and my thumb. Okay? And then what you do is you take your hook and you put it under this first line. Actually, you put it under both. And you yarn over and pull up a loop. And with your working yarn, you want to chain up 1. Okay, and you can shift your hands in any way that makes this comfortable to work in. And again, if you know another method of working in the round, feel free to do so. So now what I'm going to do is chain another 2 for a total of 3 chains. And I'm going to create 11 more double crochet in this magic ring. This chain of 3 does count as a double crochet, so you should have 12 stitches in total. There's 2, there's 3, and as you work your stitches, feel free to pull that magic circle closed so that it's easier to work with as well. 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 the closer you get to 12, the more close I would make this loop. And 9. 10, 11, and 12. Okay, and we're going to cinch that on close so that hole is nearly invisible. Now what I wish to do is close this round with a slip stitch. So we're going to close that we're going to use that slip stitch in the top of the chain 3, which can be a little tricky to see, but you want to make sure you're working into that, otherwise your increasing later is going to be uneven. Okay, so now that I've made my slip stitch, something else that I like to do when I am making hats or any other project in the round is to weave in my ends as I go, because that makes for easy cleanup later, especially if you are color changing. So in order to do that, I'm going to take this loose tail end and I'm going to bring it under my hook but in front of my project and hold it there. And I'm going to go ahead and chain up my 3. And this brings the yarn up to the second row. It's okay if you have this string here. Usually when you work a hat, the inside is on the outside and the outside is on the inside. It's a tongue twister, and so it doesn't matter really if this is outward. You know which side is your back and which side is your front. So now, as I hold the yarn to my project, I'm going to make an increase in the base of this chain 3. So what that means is I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to insert my hook right where that chain 3 is coming out of. And because that chain of 3 counts as a stitch, that means I have just made an increase. And I am going to make an increase in every stitch around for a total of 24 stitches. And if you're unfamiliar with some of this terminology, I do have separate videos that cover working in the round as well as color changing and things of that nature. So feel free to browse through the channel and check some of those videos out as well. Last stitch is right here. I'm making my final increase. And I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 to close my row. Now along that whole row I have woven in this string, so I'll be able to snip that if I want, at any time that I want, because it's woven in already. So now I'm just going to let it go, let it hang. I'm going to chain 3 and I'm going to make another increase in the base of this chain 3 as well. Okay, and then in this very next stitch we're going to put 1 double crochet. Alright, and in the next stitch I'm going to place an increase, so 1, 2 in the same stitch. In the next one I'm going to place 1 double crochet. Okay, and that is the pattern for this round. So I'm going to take a moment to complete this round and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. Okay, crafty, so I'm coming up on the last stitch of row 3, or round 3 rather, and I am going to end it by putting 1 double crochet in the last stitch. So with each row of increase, you know you ended it correctly, and this is why I always increase in the first stitch, because you'll notice that if you end with a single stitch when you began the row with the increase, you'll know you're on the right track basically. And so I'm going to insert my hook in the top of that chain 3 and pull that slip stitch right on through, and I am going to chain 3. Row 4, I am going to yarn over and place an increase in the base of that chain 3, and then I'm going to put 1 double crochet in the next 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and lay that out and get my yarn life together. Alright, and in the next stitch I am going to place an increase. Great. Now I'm going to place a double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. Awesome. My yarn doesn't like me today. And now I'm going to place a double crochet increase in the next stitch. Okay. And that's the pattern for this row. So you're going to continue making an increase, a double crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then another increase all the way around until you get to the end of the row. Alright, so I have finished round 4, and I have snipped my little string that I wove in, and I've already chained my 3. So what I'm going to do is yarn over and make an increase in the base of that chain 3, just like that. Now what I'll do is make a double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then I will place a double crochet increase in the next stitch. 2. Okay. Going to make 3 double crochet in the next 3 stitches. 2, 3. Great. And now I will place an increase in the next stitch. So for this row between increases, we are up to 3 stitches between increases, and in the next row you are going to have 4 double crochets between increases, and that will be our last row of increase. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this round, and I'm going to do the next round, and I'll meet you back when I get to the end of the row. Okay, crafties, so I have finished up rounds 5 and 6, and I have gone up to chain 3 so I can get a head start on row 7. So typically a beanie that doesn't slouch is about 18 rows, give or take. So rows 7 through 18 are going to be all the same pattern, and that is simply placing 1 double crochet in each stitch around and joining the row with a slip stitch. And so if you are kind of new to crocheting and you have a hard time counting your rows, what I liked to do once I finished expanding was keep up with the row that I initially started doing my 1 stitch in each, going all the way around. So I just place a stitch marker around that chain 3, and that just helps me keep count so I know when to stop. So I'll meet you guys back when I have completed all those rows up to row 18. Adjusting out, clearing up, and would this whole thing fit on camera? The answer is no, not comfortably. Now I can say yes. Now I'm going to sit. And fiddle faddle with this yarn. Okay. And 3, 2, 1. Okay, crafty, so I am finishing up row 11. Hopefully you've caught up with me. And I am doing these last little stitches before I fasten off. Inserting my hook into the top of that chain 3, making a slip stitch. Now to fasten off this project, you're just going to chain 1 and you're going to pull up a loop. Let me get my handy snips here. And when you're snipping your yarn off of your project, you have a left side and a right side, whoopsies, and what you're going to do is notice that the yarn pulls up from the left side and you're going to cut that left side. I remember a beginning project that I did and I cut the wrong side and I cut it too close to the knot and it came undone. So now that that's done, we can flip our hat inside out or outside in. Blah. Inside out, yes. So that our finished side is actually on the outside. And to me, there's always a difference between how the inside stitches look and how the outside stitches look. To me, the inside stitches are less vibrant and a little more fuzzy as opposed to the ones that are meant for the outside. So before I end off this tutorial, we are going to weave in our ends. Now with this one in particular, there is a seam going up the back. There is a tutorial back on my channel that will demonstrate on how to use different joining methods to eliminate this. We're just gonna thread our yarn here. If it wants to thread. And what I like to do is sew my strings onto the inside. So I'm gonna turn that kind of back on the wrong side. And I'm going to look, now you can see this seam on both on the inside and the outside of the hat, which is kind of helpful when it comes to sewing in. Now what I like to do is just put my needle down that chain 3 in a way where it's not noticeable on the outside, kind of behind the loops. Some people will sew in their ends going around the hat, and it doesn't matter, just whichever makes you feel more comfortable. And I'm gonna weave and weave and weave. And luckily I have my best friend here. It's called Fray Check. Now I always rub the lettering off of my Fray Check bottles. I've discovered that that is just inescapable for me, no matter what bottle. But anyway, you can just put a little dab. Fray Check is basically a liquid stitch holder, so it secures everything. And you just want to put down a little dab. I use my bottle a lot and it likes to be stubborn, but that's okay. You can always use the tip of your scissors or the point of your sewing needle and kind of open up that hole a little bit more. And just put very little where you wove it in, and sometimes I'll put just like a little dab at the bottom of that sewing in. And now I know that for sure, okay, my sewing in is secure. And I'm going to snip my yarn. Just like that. And then we can come back up here. Now you don't have to. I know in a lot of my earlier hats that I used to do, I would also tack down with Fray Check up here, but it's a little bit much. You don't have to do that, especially since it's already woven in. You can just cut that and turn it back on the right side. And you have now finished your beanie. You can clearly see the back, clearly see the front. Now a few tips for this. This beanie should fit your average person like around the ears. There wouldn't be any sag to it at all. If you wanted your beanie to slouch, then you would of course do extra rows. Now for a standard beanie we did the 18 rows, which is great, but if you wanted to slouch any, you would do 24 rows or longer, and that would definitely get you that kind of boho stylized look for your hat. And if you wanted to, if you have the labels like I do, you could possibly sew them onto the insides of your hat. I do that sometimes, other times not so much. And yeah, I think that concludes today's tutorial. So let me know if you liked this video. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe so you don't ever miss a tutorial. I upload content every week or every Sunday. And until next time, happy making. Okay crafties, like I said earlier in the video, Warm Up America is an initiative, a non-profit charity really set up across the nation, and it is centered around making and giving back to the community and giving to those without. So head on over to their website, warmupamerica.org, to learn more about what they do and what they're all about. They're always looking for volunteers, makers, and donators to help them out. They give you a short little clip about their mission, their foundations, and how you can get involved, and about their team members. So until next time crafties, happy making.